Omega Rising is a sci-fi novella set in York about Jenny Harding, an 18-year-old girl just starting out in the world. She gets her first job at a company called Gray's Tower, a big tech firm, who've been experiencing some mysterious thefts recently. As she investigates the thieves, Jenny quickly realises there's something very odd going on, and the thieves are actually using alien technology. As she starts to dig deeper, Jenny faces a really important question. Is she actually on the right side? There are two main reasons I set the book in York. One, I used to live there, so I know the area, and I was able to picture certain parts of York in my mind when I was writing it. So the street where Jenny lives is somewhere where some of my university friends used to live, and I know which coffee shop Jenny went on her date with Ethan. Things like that, which make it easier for me to write the story and make it feel real. But the main reason I picked York is it just really amused me to think of York as being this setting for this sci-fi conflict and alien technology, because it's pretty high on the list of last places you'd expect Alien Armageddon to be taking place. The style is very different from Child of the Hive, my first novel. Child of the Hive is a sort of ensemble novel. There's a lot of main characters, each with their own plot and their own activities, which tie together into the larger novel. When I first got the idea that became Omega Rising, I thought it was going to be the same sort of thing. I had a group of characters working together, getting involved with all this mysterious alien stuff, and I thought it was going to be that sort of story. But there was another character in my mind who was the antagonist of this story, who was set against those characters. And as I was starting to work out, actually, what's this person's motives? Why is this person doing the things that they're doing? Why is this person fighting these other characters? And it actually occurred to me that that story was the interesting one. That was the character I wanted to focus on, which essentially flipped the entire story on its head, and suddenly I had a brand new main character. And I was working out how best to tell this story. And actually, it is all through this person's eyes. As the audience, you uncover what is going on as Jenny uncovers it. So I realised that actually the first person narrative was quite an interesting way of taking this. But more than that, it's not just a case that it's seen through her eyes. What if it's actually her telling the story? And that's where I ended up with Omega Rising. It took me about 4 different attempts to start this book, but the minute I started in this style as Jenny sitting down a few years later and telling her story as she remembered it, telling her side of events, suddenly everything just flowed. It all started coming out, and I actually wrote the first draft in about a month. It just suddenly worked in my head as an idea, and it became Jenny's story. This is her tale, her writing, her story, her confession almost, of why she did the things she did. When I finished the first draft of Omega Rising, I had a bit of a problem because it was a novella-length piece, and there aren't that many publishers, traditional publishers, that take novellas. Most want a full-length novel. And I didn't feel I could easily pad this out, but the story felt right at its current length. So I did a bit of looking around and decided that actually self-publishing was a feasible option. I could take it to a company that would sell me an editing package, proofreading, cover design, layout, all the things you need to put together a quality product. And they would happily take a novella, so I could do it myself without having to hunt around through all of the different publishers for find the one that would actually take the right length for me. I could take the story as it was, as worked, and just go to market with that. So that's an interesting question, because I know exactly where Jenny is when she's writing this story. I know the events that have happened to put her in the position she is when she's writing the story. Which means I can actually let some of those sneak in little hints through the story about where she actually is. But I don't know exactly how it's going to happen that she ends up there. I know quite a lot of the key events, I know most of the big things that have to happen, and I've actually written the first draft of the next story in the series, but there's still a few holes that I need to fill on the way there. But I've got the plan in mind. My favourite character would have to be Jenny, just because I spend so much time in her head when I was writing this that I really feel like I know her and know how she'll react. But I do have a bit of a soft spot for a couple of the other characters. So one is Princess, who is this really feminine girl. She likes the colour pink, she has a teddy bear wearing a tutu in her university dorm. But she is so strong. She is a fighter, she will stand up for others, and she will not take any nonsense from anyone. And I really liked this sort of, not exactly contradiction, but this playing with the stereotypes, that you could have someone who is pretty and feminine, but at the same time serious and strong. And there's also Navy, who I just like as a bit of a geek, and his code name is somewhat of a joke, in that it is a reference to Captain Scarlet. And this is exactly the sort of character who would choose his codename after a puppet show. And that's why I like him. Not going to answer that one. So what's next is a slightly tricky question to answer, because it depends on what order things happen in. As I said, I have finished the first draft of the second book in the Omega series, and got to do some rework, got to do some editing. I'm not sure when that'll be ready. But I've also recently signed a contract for traditionally publishing another novel. This is a full-length novel called Shadows of Tomorrow, and you'll be hearing a bit more about that nearer the time, which will probably be sometime early next year.